All right, hello and welcome to this lesson where we're going to begin designing our first project, and this is going to be for a fictional game, and it's going to be based around a jungle scene, and it's going to be side scrolling, so the background is going to need to tile horizontally indefinitely. All right, so here in Adobe Illustrator, it's going to get started by going to File, New, and we're going to use the standard tablet dimension using pixels, but first let's go ahead and name this. We'll just call this Jungle. Number of artboards 1, and we have width here. We're going to change this over here to pixels, and we're going to specify 2048. Hit tab, and then 1536. Now again, as we went over previously, it doesn't really matter that we're using a pixel dimension because everything's going to be vectors, so it can be scaled up to any size imaginable. Alright, so with that said, bleed, we don't have to worry about this. It's just for print. Now for advanced, we want to make sure that the color mode is RGB, and that is for screen display. So this is going to be shown on screen devices. Otherwise, CMYK is just reserved for printing usually. Alright, so with that said, raster effects 72, that's fine. You can align new objects to pixel grid, and you can check that on, and let's hit OK. All right, so based on my current resolution, which is 1280 by 720, I believe, the at 100%, this would be real large. So if I hit Control 1, I can only see so much. So what I like to do is just to get it to fit right around 33%, just so I can see everything as we stand here. So the first process here that we're going to get started with is getting the background and also designing the mountains. All right, so as we talked about in the previous chapter, when it comes to depth, we're really going to have to focus on using color effectively and contrast in order to create that sense of depth within the illustration. So we're going to do that here by focusing on the background and the mountains. All right, so I'm going to use the rectangle tool, and I'm just going to left click and come all the way out down here. Now you can notice this little green, it says intersect right now on the lower right hand corner. These are smart guides. If you don't have them turned on, you just go to view and smart guides, and that can kind of just help you line things up as you're designing here. All right, so right now if we click on, you see our foreground color is currently white. We're going to change this to a gradient. So we're going to go ahead here to linear. We're going to hit G for gradient, and then hold left click, hold shift, and just go all the way down right around there. All right, so with a gradient tab open, and if you don't have any of these available, just go to window and you can find them in here, gradients right there. We're going to choose our first color stop right here and double click on it, and we're going to change this to RGB. Sorry, that was off the side a little bit. And we want to key in a specific value for the RGB values. Right now it's showing up off screen. Let me just take that out there. There we go. Now if I double click this, we can see we have the this hex color code right here, and I'm going to use a specific one, and that's going to be BAFF7F, and hit enter. And you can see it's just a kind of a vibrant but also somewhat desaturated green up at the top. And for the second color picker, we're going to switch to RGB here, and we're also going to choose a different color, and that's going to be 009245. Hit enter. All right, so the reason I chose these two colors here is because the sky here is going to be a little bit lighter as you get more close to a light source, and then it just gets a little bit darker. All right, and so what I want to do is get our layers here, and let me drag this back in over here. So get our layers, drop down layer 1, and we can double click this to rename them, and this is just going to be BG for background, and now we can lock this. All right, so now we have the background here ready to go. We want to work on some mountains, distant mountains, and we're going to have two different ranges. So basically there's going to be some mountains way in the background, and then some that are a little bit closer, but they're still going to have both of them are going to still feel quite distant. All right, so to do this, we have to remember for this to tile correctly, the backgrounds or the mountains for each of the two different layers we're about to create need to end on the same horizontal path right here, or vertical rather. Otherwise, you'll notice if they're off a little bit, there will be a noticeable, I guess you could say, space between where they start and end. So you want it to be seamless, essentially. And a way that you can do this that makes it easier to make sure you have those lined up correctly is you can go to View and then Grid, Show Grid. All right, and you can also edit your grid. If you go to Edit, Preferences, and Guides and Grids, bring this up over here. You can have grid line every X and then subdivisions, and you have over here. If I were to take this and maybe just take it down to 36, see what happens. That's not the desired result. I'm going to go to Edit Preferences real quick again. We're going to change this here. We're going to change subdivisions just to 1, and we're going to change this to 80 pixels. So every 80, we want less of these. All right, and that seems pretty good right there. Okay, so the way we want to begin here is we want to choose a mountain color, but first let's get the shape going here. We're going to use the pen tool for this, and then we're going to also use another tool that will roughen up the edges, essentially, of the background, or the mountains rather. So I'm going to start probably right around here and just left click, and I'm just going to left click a few times, and I'm dragging a few times when I'm left clicking. And I may back up by hitting Control Z a few times. And there's not much thought about this in terms of, how I'm choosing to structure these. So you don't have to be 100% perfect. Now, what you do have to mind, though, is your start points from your very beginning anchor point to the very end. And you want those, we could see right here is where it begins, and that's where we want this one to end. All right, so I'm going to do that real quick. And it ends essentially roughly right around there. And I'm just going to come down around here, holding Shift, left click, Shift, left click, and then end up on the initial anchor. Okay, so this right now has a stroke, so I'm going to get rid of that. I'm going to hit 0. And we're also going to change the color. All right, so the color, if you remember, it needs to be a little bit darker than the background, and that way it still creates a sense of depth here. So we're not going to give it a gradient. It's just going to be a single solid color, and we're going to give it some opacity as well. All right, so let's go ahead and bring up our gradient right here. We're going to change the color to a specific color. So go over here and 1 second, change this to, I'm just going to choose a green right here, and then we can see under color, we can change this to a specific color code. That's going to be 5CBF61. Hit enter. All right, and because we see this separation here, we don't have to worry about that because there's going to be other layers of information beneath it. And so then what we want to do is create a second one, and some of it's going to protrude out higher and some will be lower. So let's go ahead and do that real quickly. And I'll take this and click right around. I guess we can have it begin on the next grid line down. All right. We'll have this one go up a little bit. Have this one come down. And again, you don't have to be perfect. You can do your own mountain ranges. You don't have to get exactly or do exactly what I'm doing here. Now remember, we do have to end up right here on this grid line. Maybe right, we'll come up a little bit and then down right there. All right, and then we'll come down right down here, holding shift. Doesn't really matter how far you come down because, like I said, there's going to be other stuff in front of this covering it up. Okay, so now they're both the same color, so I'm going to drop the opacity down on this. So we want to go to transparency with that back layer or back path selected, and we want to choose something around, I think 30% will probably work. Let's see what that looks like. All right, that's pretty good. I like that. Okay, so these mountains, of course, they're real smooth, fine lines. They don't really look all that natural. So what I'm going to do is use one of these tools in which you can manipulate paths. So we're going to select this right here, this front one. And we're going to hit Control H so we don't have to see all of the anchor points. It makes it a little bit easier to work with. And we're going to come over here. We're going to left click, hold it, and then choose the wrinkle tool. Now the wrinkle tool is really cool. You can just go along the path and it will just basically roughen and wrinkle it up. So let's try that right now. So I'm just left clicking and holding the whole time, and I'm going along this path. All right, so that gives a nice effect. It kind of makes it just have the overall silhouette appearance of having just, you know, different leaves and such, and just being a little bit distorted so it doesn't look so smooth. And you know what, I'm probably going to leave this one back here since it's so far back, along with the just the smooth lines as it has now. Because remember, when you're dealing with something that's real far away in the background, you're not going to see the tiny little details. Okay, so I think what I am going to do, just to make things a little bit simpler, let me move this anchor point over here with the direct selection tool. We're going to take both of these down. So I'm just left clicking and dragging, and I'm going to hit Control H. And so now that's selected the bottom 4 anchor points of each of these mountain ranges. Just hold shift and just bring them down to the very, very bottom. All right, that way nothing's cut off right now. All right, and that is it for this lesson. So again, make sure everything lines up correctly for the beginning and end of your 2 mountain ranges, or the jungle ranges, or whatever you want to call them. And you'll be good to go. All right, so in the next lesson, we're going to focus on designing the ground and the platform from which the character will be running or doing whatever. All right, I'll see you then.